Hello and welcome everyone to the 2024 half-year results for Tribal Group. Let me start today with just a brief reminder of who we are. Tribal sells student lifecycle software to predominantly higher education, universities and further education colleges. So the student management system are essentially applications that deal with the admissions, the enrollment, all the way through to graduation for students. We have a significant market share, as you'll see below. Over 60% of universities in the UK use our core SITS product. More than a quarter in Australia use our SITS and our Callista product, and something more than 35% market share of UK further education colleges. We also have a second business called Education Services, which essentially partners with education authorities to deliver large-scale education services projects to improve the quality, the impact of education. And Education Services we'll come on to, but that has actually been rebranded, renamed this year. So Education Services is now an organization called ETIO, which we'll come on to. So an overview of half one. Overall, our revenue was up some 5% or so, and within that, the cloud revenues, which are key to our growth, were up some 26%. Margin also was up in cloud. Indeed, our EBITDA also was up some 7% or so. And this really reflects the strong performance of ARR growth in previous years, where it has taken time for predominantly cloud migrations to be delivered. And we've seen an excellent performance in our professional services delivery in completing a number of successful cloud migrations this year. So that's now feeding through into the revenue. What we do see is flat ARR, which I think we might have expected with all the activity last year being an offer period for indeed much of last year. Customers clearly are not going to buy our product when we're in an offer period. So the sales opportunities we had were significantly impacted by that activity. So to get to a flattish core ARR number felt relatively positive given the situation that we have been coming out of. But the key message for H1 really has been about the business reinvigoration. So the challenges we had at Nanyang Technological University are now behind us. That was settled during H1. The offer period from last year is also now behind us. So it's all about how we invigorate the business moving forward. And as part of that, we have introduced a new pricing model to accelerate cloud adoption, and we've also separated our education services business out and rebranded it ETIO, which we'll come on to. So overall, we feel we have a positive outlook. Sales pipeline is now improving as those customer opportunities, which were always there, are now back and live, and that forms really the strong basis for future recurring revenues. If we look at wins and successful implementations in the period, we sold one new cloud deal in the period. We also won one new student management system customer, SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, part of the University of London. And this was really key to us. We actually concluded the contract with them at the end of July, but really key because there was intense competition for this customer. And of course, there are not 5, 10, 15 tenders out there. In the course of H1, there was one new university tender that we went for, SOAS, and we won that. And to win that really, I think, demonstrates the fact that the sector has moved on in terms of their thinking about Tribal from the offer period last year and the challenges of last year, and the fact that we closed this one new deal with the level of competition we had feels like a really positive building of momentum moving forward. We also win new deals with our EBS software, which is our predominantly further education software. As you can see, we won a new customer there at the London School of Management. As I say, the implementation was really good in the course of H1. The University of Exeter, for example, was a migration that was started and ended with an 8-month period. And that is a significantly compressed timeline compared to some of the implementations in the past. So we're getting to a much more rapid implementation and delivery. In the bottom right-hand side, ETIO, the rebranded education services, closed one significant new deal called Multiply, which is about maths improvement. But significantly, they successfully re-tendered for the large NYSED contract in the US, the New York State Education Department contract. That was a key re-tender for us, and tendered successfully for an extension for the National Centre for the Excellence in the Teaching of Mathematics contract, which is a key contract within the UK. So overall, in terms of its re-tenders, really successful for ETIO. So with that, I will pass over to Diane McIntyre, our CFO, for her comments on our numbers. Diane.
Thank you very much, Mark. So over half one, we've had a steady overall financial performance. We've delivered revenue growth, a stable EBITDA margin, and a return to positive operating cash flows. So walking through the summary of our key financial metrics, revenue grew 5.2% to 44.9 million. Of particular note is cloud revenues, which have grown 26% to 6.2 million. ARR is stable at 54.4 million, with a 2% growth in our core products, driven by foundation, offset by the expected decline in our non-core areas. Committed income or order backlog is down 9.2% to 152.6 million, and that's due to the delivery of our large contracts across both ES and SIS. Adjusted EBITDA on an underlying basis has grown 7.2% to 7.4 million. This excludes a £1 million one-off benefit in 2023 due to the net impact of the NTU onerous contract provision release. Cash EBITDA is up 48% to 4.9 million, driven by a 46% decline in capitalised product development down to 2.5 million. Adjusted profit before tax has decreased to 4.4 million due to upside in the previous year, as I mentioned, from the NTU provision release and higher financing costs. Statutory profit before tax is impacted by 3.4 million of exceptional items, mostly due to the 2.9 million provision for the NTU settlement that Mark mentioned earlier. This settlement we paid by the end of 2025. So this all leads to our adjusted basic earnings per share of 1.9p for the 6-month period. Net debt improved to £10 million from 12.9 million as at half one last year, and you'll see later that operating cash has returned to a positive cash inflow of £2 million in the first half of the year. So my second slide shows the performances of our two business units, Student Information Systems and our rebranded ETIO. So SIS will be discussed in more detail on the next slide, but in summary, revenues increased by £2 million to 35.2 million, and that's due to growth in both our cloud and foundation products. Operating margin has increased to 38.3% as we continue to drive through those cloud efficiencies and gain scale. On the ES side, we've seen the business continuing to deliver on its large UK contracts with the Department for Education, and revenues have grown 2.2%. The two DfE contracts of note are the Multiply contract, which we won in 2023, which Mark mentioned earlier, and the NC ETM contract, where the scope has been increased. This decrease in operating margin that you can see is largely due to the mix of contracts with lower revenues than normal in the Middle East, which typically attract much higher margins, together with the investment in our delivery, our sales, and our management teams, which will help drive future growth. There's also some contract phasing, which pushes margin into the second half of the year. So this together means our overall EBITDA has increased from 6.9 million on an underlying basis to 7.4 million, also helped by a slight reduction in our central overheads due to lower NTU costs. So the next slide moves on to cover our SIS performance. Overall, as mentioned, revenues have increased by 6.1% with successful migrations to the cloud, and we've had uplifts across foundation and cloud products. Unusually, other software and services increased by 0.2 million due to some one-off project work. Our TAFE New South Wales and DOE contracts are expected to complete during H2 this year, at which point we anticipate no further revenue from these. TAFE and DOE contracts together contributed 2.4 million to other software and services in the first half of this year. On an underlying basis, operating margin grew 2.5 percentage points to 38.3%, and that's from growth in our higher margin foundation products and increase in cloud efficiencies I mentioned earlier. And that's as we grow our scale across the base, our margins will naturally continue to grow. The reported numbers in the prior year benefited by 1.3 million due to the release of that onerous contract provision. So going through our standard SaaS metrics at the bottom left, you can see an increase in both our gross and net revenue retention numbers. GRR demonstrates of the customer base as at June 2023, 6% of the recurring revenues have been lost through customer downgrades or cancellations. But then when you include upsells to that very same customer base, recurring revenues increased to give our highest ever net revenue retention of 107%. On the next slide, we look at SIS ARR in some more detail. So overall ARR has remained stable at 54.4 million, despite the pause in sales conversations whilst we're in that offer period, and also despite that decline in other software and services. As a reminder, ARR is a forward-looking indicator of recurring SaaS revenues for the next 12 months. Both foundation and cloud products grew roughly 3% due to uplifts across our base and a new sale to the Institute of Tourism in Malta that Mark had on his slide earlier. The growth in our core products is offset by the expected decline in other software and services, and that's declined 31% due to the expected completion in June 2025 of our British Council contract. It's worth noting that all major contracts have now been removed from this line, so there should be a much more gradual decline going forward. In summary, the continuing growth in core ARR gives us a very solid foundation for the future cross-sell to our existing customer base. On the next slide, I'll move on to cash flow. Here you can see our net debt position has increased from 7.2 million at the year end to 10 million pounds at H1. 3.7 million of cash was generated from operating activities, which is a substantial improvement from the 3 million pound cash outflow last year. There were 1.7 million of cash exceptional payments, and 1 million pounds of that relates to the provision at the end of last year for the restructuring costs. Tax payments and other items, mainly property leases, were 1.5 million, and investment continues in our Edge products, albeit at a lower rate at 2.5 million. So with the financing and forex adjustments added in, it brings us to our closing net debt position of 10 million pounds. As a reminder, we have a 20 million pound revolving credit facility and a further 5 million pound accordion, and this runs until the end of 2026 and it has 2 optional additional years. We also have a £2 million overdraft facility in the UK and a $2 million Australian dollar facility. My next slide is on product development. Our capitalised product development spend has decreased to 2.5 million as we focused our efforts on our existing successful Edge product range and we complete admissions, and this is in order to maximise our returns. Admissions is still expected to go live in the second half of 2025. And further CapEx reductions are expected to continue over 2025, with CapEx spend stabilising in 2026. In summary, financials have shown a steady growth in our high-quality recurring revenue streams. Core ARR has been growing at 10% CAGR since 2021. And with our reducing CapEx and our cost reduction programmes, we aim to maintain margins and improve cash flow over time as we do that transition to an EdTech SaaS business. Only 33 of our 126 customers have moved to the cloud, so there is still a significant opportunity for us to grow ARR. If 8 customers signed up to the cloud every year, and they have an average 0.5 million ARR, it's quite easy to see that a £20 million increase could be achieved in 5 years. Now, I'm now going to hand back to Mark, and he'll talk more about our overall strategy and our new pricing approach. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Diane. So indeed, let's have a look at the new strategy. Let's start though with what is driving the opportunity in our business. And it is fundamentally the requirement of universities to reduce their cost, reduce their technical debt, become more agile, and also to mitigate the cyber risk. There are regular ransomware attacks on the higher education sector. Indeed, the most recent one was as recently as the week before last. So this is a significant risk for the universities that they want to mitigate, and that drives them to look to take their systems out into the cloud, and Tribal Cloud offering is key in doing that. And as Dan noted, right, we have 34 with SOAS in the cloud. There are probably 60 or 70 more customers to go for, with very significant opportunity in that space. So if we then have a look at the key initiatives then to prepare ourselves and our customers to do that, they revolve around these three key initiatives: building operational efficiency, a transition to this new partnership model, and education services ETIO as a standalone business. Operational efficiency is internal and external. It is about enabling a more agile interaction with customers, making it easier for customers to buy our products, work with Tribal. Internally, it's about being more efficient, being more agile internally as well. The new partnership model is about our new pricing model. And for ETIO, the ETIO business is not a software business, it's a services business. And it has been very closely integrated within our core business. And we made the decision to move it out into a separate legal entity, so it becomes a standalone business. So in terms of the first of those, driving efficiency, from the customer perspective, we have some customers who've been with us many, many years, paying far, far less per student than the more recent customers. So moving to a different pricing model is about consistency, standard fairness of pricing. But it's also about moving customers to a model that allows us to partner more closely with them. So a more standard offering that customers have makes it easier for them to work with us and for us to work with them. Internally, our global business services team is a team we started up about 15, 17 months ago in Manila. They have been very successful in the migration of work out to them. And this is about building a standard, scalable set of processes across different lines of business. It's not only about the finance side. We have successfully migrated HR activities, operational activities, contracts management, operational legal activities out to GBS, and we will continue to do more of that. Internally, we have made a lot of changes in terms of restructuring to create greater efficiencies. A single example to select is shown at the bottom there, the single cloud engineering team. So our cloud teams were separate and they were focused on individual products. We brought them together into a single cloud engineering team, and we have seen the results of that coming through with significantly improved cloud margins in 2023, moving into 2024. And as we scale up Tribal Cloud more, we expect to improve those margins further. And all of this has been around offsetting headwinds. Diane noted that we're getting towards the end of the runoff of our high margin legacy software. It's out of ARR, and that will conclude in FY25. But a key thing is to offset those headwinds by taking actions to maintain those margins. So the second was about the Tribal partnership model, or as we call it, the higher education full service model. So this is ensuring that we have a fair, consistent rate paid by all of our customers on a per student per annum basis. But it's about providing customers with a way to reduce their total cost of ownership of their product, their TCO of their student management environment over a period of time. That means providing a bundle of products to customers in return for a single fee. So that's a value-based pricing. So we have a lot of value in our products, components of our core product sits, other products such as Tribal timetabling, which will be deeply embedded within the SITS environment, deeply integrated into it. We have templates, best practice, blueprints for end-to-end processes of the student life cycle that are used by our consultants when they implement new products. We want to deliver this value to customers in a way that they don't need to come out and buy each component one at a time. Actually, creating a model that delivers all that value to customers in return for a single annual fee allows both parties to concentrate on creating a partnership and helping the customers go on the journey to an as-a-service SITS product delivered in the cloud. And it is a journey because the customers need to have a plan, have a strategy to optimize SITS, prepare themselves to move into the tribal cloud in the most efficient way, and we need to be there to support them. So this is about increasing Tribal's share of the customer student management system wallet, but at the same time reducing the TCO, the total cost of ownership for the customer over time. Now, we have rolled this out to customers recently from early June, and we are engaged in a lot of conversations with customers about it. I would expect customers to migrate to this new model over the course of the next year from now. So it's not something that will instantly change, but it is a direction that reinvigorates that relationship with our customers and sets us up as a true as-a-service company for the years ahead. The third pillar there was about education services. As I say, we have rebranded education services as ETIO, and we put further investment into the business, particularly around the sort of business development, bid management, to ensure then that we can grow the conversion rates for tenders that the ETIO business goes after. As we see significant opportunity within the UK, as well as in the US and the Middle East. They're three core markets. It has been impacted in 2024 by the calling of the general election, perhaps earlier than one had expected. So as we look forward to 2025, we'd expect then those opportunities that are still there to then be put out to tender. So we will continue to invest in ETIO over the coming sort of 2 to 3 years or so. And when we get to a certain point, we will then assess our strategic options for the business. A key part, though, is the rebranding of ETIO and the separation of ETIO from our core business. So a separate legal entity, separate management and separate team, so that the business can develop and deliver its value as a standalone business, which gives us more strategic options when the time comes. So finally, a summary. So we continue to focus on ARR. That is our core metric and continues to be our core metric. We are reinvigorating those opportunities following that conclusion of the offer process last year. Our new pricing model will drive increased ARR for us. And we have a strong business model, and we are very much focused on reinvigorating, changing the business internally to be more agile to do business with, setting ourselves up to become a true edtech pure play software business. So overall outlook, the intent of the universities is to continue adopting cloud technologies. As many of you will have read in the press, there are concerns about sort of funding challenges that universities have, and they're under significant cost pressures. Those are undoubtedly the case. The domestic student fee is in real terms far less than it was in years gone by. So the increased reliance then on international students is what has driven their growth in the last number of years. And of course, the concerns around not only the UK immigration policy, but the same debate is being had also in our other key market in Australia around immigration policy for students, is causing concerns within the sector. For us, we still have those opportunities to help the customers drive their costs down. So for many of those customers concerned, they are clearly going to want to invest further in IT to ensure they can get to the cloud and get their overall total costs of ownership down. So on that basis, we see the overall sales pipeline coming back, and we are then confident in achieving our FY24 results in line with market expectations.